Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabansi. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and when we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we got a pretty interesting show for you guys, but before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, as y'all know, we're in the heat of the playoffs in round one, and there are a lot of interesting series out there. But one of those series is between the Sacramento Kings and the Golden State Warriors, who, by the way, were able to get a very, very impressive, dominant win against the Sacramento Kings yesterday, without Draymond Green, right? Very, very impressive win. Shout out to Stephen Curry and those guys. Stephen Curry, once again, doing exactly what I expected him to do. So they won that game. Now, prior to that game, JJ Redick of ESPN was actually on ESPN complaining about the way the referees are refereeing these games, and basically that the refereeing is going against Stephen Curry and the Warriors, and Curry is being grabbed and pulled, and he doesn't really have any freedom of movement. Now, what we want to do is we want to play exactly what he had to say about the officiating of these games, and then we're going to come back and continue with this thing here. So take a listen to what JJ Redick had to say here about the officiating. Take a listen to that.
They have allowed too much. I have no problem with physical play in the playoffs. But if Steph Curry's not allowed to move off the ball, if you're preventing players from running down the court and you're allowing that to happen, there's a play late in game two where Kevon Looney's right underneath the rim, ready for a rebound. Sabonis crashes in, pushes him in the back. They don't call the foul. That's a foul. The referees have dictated too much in the Kings' favor in this series. I really believe that. And I don't know if it's the home crowd or whatever. I rarely complain about the referees. In fact, I don't even know if I've ever complained about the referees. I think they're great.
I want to talk Warriors Kings, and I do want to talk about one other Western Conference matchup and just title odds on them. But Warriors Kings, we are recording this again after game two, so we know for a fact Kings up 2-0, going back to Golden State this weekend. I still believe the Warriors can win this series. I will say a few things just basketball related, and that is they've had a game plan for the Kings defensively. They've done a great job on the dribble handoff action. By and large, they've kept De'Aaron Fox out of the paint and turned him into a jump shooter. And you have these crazy splits with his jump shooting through the first two games. He's 4 for 20 on jump shots through 3 quarters, and he's 7 for 11 in the fourth quarter. Obviously, we know he's been a fantastic clutch time performer all season long. He's been great in the clutch. And so they win 2 clutch games at home. I'm not overreacting to that. The Warriors have issues with turnovers. The Warriors have issues with fouls. We all know that. I think when they get home, their 3-point shooting will normalize a little bit, just 32% through 2 games. The other thing that I don't think enough people are talking about is the impact that Draymond Green's ejection will have on the officiating. My observation is through 2 games, this was as physical of a series as I've seen this playoff season and in recent memory. The amount of stuff that they're allowing, both on and off the ball, it's not really regular season rules. And so because of the incident with Sabonis, which, by the way, was like the 4th time they had been tangled up in this series, because of the incident with Sabonis and Green, will the officiating be a little tighter? Will they start calling some of those holds for when Davion Mitchell and De'Aaron Fox are grabbing Steph Curry off the ball?
So you heard his position, that he's not happy with it. Yesterday, I believe he went out there and basically tried to modify or clarify his position. Now, while doing research this morning, I actually came across an article here from fadeawayworld.net. And this article is basically highlighting Matt Barnes, who I believe works with ESPN, basically reacting to what JJ Redick had to say. And apparently Matt Barnes does not agree with him, and he checked him for it. So let me just read some of the things of what JJ Redick Matt Barnes had to say. He wrote, Matt Barnes is funny, man. He wrote, Game 1 fouls called on the Warriors 25. Fouls called on the Kings 23. Game 2 fouls called on the Warriors 26. Fouls called on the Kings 25. Kings have just wanted it more in these first 2 games. This series is far from over. And at the beginning of that, he wrote at JJ Redick, tighten up. And then he wrote again in response to this entire thread, I guess, Kings are the reason they're up 2-0, not the referees. Well, Matt Barnes isn't the only one to basically, call out JJ Redick for saying this. Kendrick Perkins did the exact same thing yesterday on Twitter where he's like, man, this is the biggest bunch of BS I've heard. Why are these guys pushing back on JJ Redick? I believe the fundamental reason that they're pushing back on JJ Redick is simply this. It sounds like you're making excuses. It sounds like you're making excuses. And in a way, it feels like you're diminishing what the Sacramento Kings are doing. And number three, it just sounds whining. Like, well, it's the refs. Well, everybody everywhere is complaining about the referees. Go watch the Clippers game last night. Go watch that Clippers game last night versus the Suns, and you tell me if Clipper fans don't have something to be complaining about all throughout that game. But nevertheless, they still got that game down to within 3 points towards the end of the game. So, yeah, the referees are referees, but the referees it's a part of the game. And as they'll say, just play ball. Just play ball. Stop whining about the referees. Let's play ball. And I think that's the point that these gentlemen were making, right? The referees are going to call it how they see it, man. I don't see any favorites out here. Trust me. What I saw happen to the Clippers the other day, man, was I mean, it was what it was, right? It was very, very difficult. But I think that a lot of these guys are pushing back because it's like, yo, JJ, you said these are the most advanced players of ever, man. Why are you complaining about the refs? Number one. And number two, if you're complaining about the physicality now and you believe that players today are more advanced than the players before, when players like this, when players in the past play with this level of physicality and with not as much pace, and guys are still getting buckets, they're like, yo, bro, what are you talking about? I thought you told me this was the greatest era ever. So that's what I believe these guys are pushing back on. And I think it's a fair point, right? I think it's a fair point. I think I think they make a good case, right? Because JJ's been one of the guys pushing it. This era is the greatest ever. He's been the one pushing it. So now all of a sudden they start playing some tight defense. All of a sudden we're now talking about the referees. Well, look what happened last year in the first round with the Celtics versus the Nets. The referees allowed them to play physical defense, and it got ugly. They stifled Kevin Durant and these boys. So you can't complain about the refs, man. Just play ball. It's called playoff basketball, and I think that's what Kendrick Perkins and what Matt Barnes were alluding to. So these are just my thoughts. So what I want to know from you guys is simply this. Do you think JJ Redick has a point by him trying to point out the refereeing, or do you think that Matt Barnes and Kendrick Perkins are right? Like, yo, bro, stop trying to take away from these guys. This has nothing to do with fouls. It's just that these guys are outplaying them. Whatever you guys think, leave your thoughts in the comment section, and we catch you on the next show.